Welcome to Community Connections. I'm Linda Williamson, and today we're talking with Father Terry Sawchuk. Welcome, Father.
Thank you very much, Linda. Good to be here with you, and thanks for the warm welcome.
You're very welcome. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Where do you want me to start?
Like where were you born?
Sure. My background, I grew up in South Gillies, and my family, a number of the family are still out there just outside of Thunder Bay, and so grew up on a family farm and went to high school in Thunder Bay. And then after high school, I entered the seminary in Western University and pursued my studies in philosophy and theology. In 2010, I was ordained to the priesthood for service in the Diocese of Thunder Bay, and then began my service in the parish. So,
can you tell us a little bit more about your family?
I'm blessed to be from a very large family. My parents are still alive and well, and I come from a family of 10 children altogether, 5 boys and 5 girls.
Oh, wow.
And I am number 3 in the 10, so I'm the third oldest of 10, and happy to see that a number of the siblings have had an opportunity to meet someone and get married, and they're now starting their own families. So there's a number of nieces and nephews in the mix there too, and a large number of cousins and aunts and uncles who also make up my extended family. So one of the blessings in my life that I do have a very large family, but also we're very close and supportive of one another. So I'm grateful for that.
Does everybody still live in the Thunder Bay area?
Most are still here, but as time goes on, some of the siblings move off. So I do have a couple siblings to the west and a couple to the east, and the others are still close to home.
So I heard that you might have a connection to Scriber. Would you like to share that with us?
Good point. Thanks for bringing that up. In my family, one of the things I found out, and this actually I found out after coming to Scriber, is that my grandmother on my mother's side, so my maternal grandmother, when she was young, actually came to Scriber to find work, and she worked for a short time here in Scriber at Cacamos, which I understand the building is still around, Cacamos Grocery. And also she worked as a what she used the term call girl for the railroad. Now I know it has a different connotation
Yes.
now, but she always got a kick out of telling her story and how she worked on the railroad, calling people to work and making sure they were there on time. And so I was really surprised to find that connection, and it was nice to discover those personal links. One of the things I found in the church was a journal of different events in the church history that the priest would write, with different announcements that would be made on Sunday. And going back all the way to the 1940s, there was an announcement there of my grandmother's marriage, her upcoming marriage, to her soon-to-be husband, and they were announcing it here because she was living in Scriber at the time. And so even though the wedding took place in Thunder Bay, it's kind of very moving to know that here I am in this community serving in a church and in a parish that my grandmother went to in her youth. And so she is, of all my grandparents, she's the only one still alive.
Oh.
And God willing, in May she'll turn 99.
Oh my goodness,
so,
that's awesome.
Another blessing, for sure.
Have you been able to talk to her about her time in Scriber, or would she remember that?
Yeah, she has a good remembrance and memory of that time, and she was the one who basically opened up that chapter of her life to me, which was, as I say, quite amazing to hear.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's a small world.
Definitely.
And all these connections that we find out along the way. She had mentioned family names from Scriber that she had remembered, many of which are still well and alive here in town.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to tell us how you got into the priesthood?
Yeah, that's also a good question there, Linda. What led me to the ministry? What led me to the priesthood? And I would say there is no one definite factor, but a whole number of things. One of those was my family's strong commitment to the faith, very much a faith-filled family. I think that set a foundation for me to even consider this as a possibility. We also, when I was growing up and I was kind of making my way through childhood into young adulthood, I had a lot of good role models in the priesthood. So many of the priests that I knew really exemplified some of the virtues that I thought this is really something to see, in someone's life. They love the priesthood, they love their people, and they also persevered in the midst of difficulties and health problems and other things that come along the way. So I was inspired by their example. And I remember one Father Gallagher, who, when I met him, was already quite elderly. Mm-hmm. This Father Gallagher, many years before I met him, actually served at St. Martin's in Terrace Bay.
Oh, wow.
As the pastor there, so many people still remember Father Gallagher. But Father Gallagher at one point had asked a number of us, we were altar servers at the time, and after the service he had asked us as a group, he said, "Have any of you ever thought of becoming a priest?" Of course, none of us answered.
No.
None of us are going to say anything. But it was one of those questions that stuck. And it's one that kind of kept coming back in my mind. And another question that he asked was, he was giving a sermon once, he was filling in at our parish, and he said, "When I am gone, who's going to take my place?" And again, it was like a question that spoke right to me. And so the example and the good example of priests in my life, and those questions that really did stir. And as I went on, and I was considering other occupations, but ultimately I kept coming back to that question. And I knew in my heart, I thought, if I don't pursue or at least explore this possibility, then I'll probably go through the rest of my life thinking, did I miss that opportunity, or did I miss that call? And so that's what led me to applying to the seminary. And a part of me thought, I'll go in and they'll give me a reason to leave, or they'll tell me I'm not qualified or suitable, or they'll just help me in that discernment. But as time went on, year after year passed, and a lot of things were confirmed for me, and was happy to be ordained and to serve in our communities.
So how long did it take from the time you started to become a priest?
I started studying about, I graduated high school in 2001, and then that fall I went into the seminary.
Okay.
And so 8 years.
Oh, wow.
8 years. There was one point in my studies I took a year off. There was another year that you call a pastoral year. It was like a placement in a parish, and I did that placement at the cathedral, St. Patrick's Cathedral in Thunder Bay. But otherwise, most was academic, 3 years of philosophy, 4 years of theology, and before you know it, it adds up.
Yeah, definitely.
Time flies. When I started, it was pretty daunting, to have those 8-9 years ahead, and I wasn't too sure, again, would I make it the whole way, but by the grace of God, I've made it to where I am today.
And the community and the church are very, very lucky to have you.
Well, it's as I say, a pleasure to be here, and it's win-win, for sure. Thank you.
What led you being appointed to scriber?
Good question, Linda. I think, behind the scenes in my move from one community to the other, what happens generally is that as a priest of the Diocese of Thunder Bay, I've made a commitment, I've made a promise of obedience to the bishop, and the bishop essentially is the one who decides where the priests go and when they're transferred from one place to another. And so once my as I was still serving in Thunder Bay at St. Peter's Church, the bishop approached me and requested that I consider a move. And so I was open to that opportunity and packed my bags and headed east.
And do you know how long you will be staying here? Or
That's-
can you stay here for...
Yeah, and is it an indefinite assignment or is it a termed assignment? And to answer the question, I guess initially I was assigned here for 3 years. This August it'll be 6 years already. So I guess the answer would be the assignment is more of a formality. It's not hard and fast. It's not cut in stone, and so. As the situations change in the diocese, then a move might be considered, but I'm really hopeful and optimistic that I'll be here for a lot longer. So
We hope so too.
Thank you. Yeah, I do really enjoy the communities, and it's given me an opportunity to grow in leadership and in my pastoral work. And but one of the things that I've really enjoyed is just getting to know the people and grow in relationship with the people who make these communities. I gotta say, it really is a blessing to be here and to grow with the people that I find myself with. So.
And what communities do you look after?
So currently, I take care of 4 communities: the community of Scriber, of Terrace Bay, of Pays Plat, and of Rossport. So essentially there's 2 parishes, Terrace Bay and Scriber, and the communities of Rossport and Pays Plat fall under the parish of Scriber as missions. And so that's kind of the extent of my ministry, or the area that I care for pastorally.
How are you personally or your ministry affected by COVID?
Good question, Linda. There, a lot of thoughts definitely come to mind when you ask that question. As it was for many people, it was definitely a time of trial. It was a challenging time, and at the same time, for me personally, it did bring me to a deeper appreciation of what I do and of the faith that I do hold as my own, and so. It's also helped me to appreciate the role of groups within the community and the way in which we support one another. And I think of our church, for example, the way it's impacted attendance physically, but the way that people have also rallied together and supported each other, looked out for each other, checked in on how people are doing, and also offered support even in what we might call the aftermath of COVID-19. Even though it's still very much a reality, we're in a different place and can appreciate it from a different angle. And so as far as our parish goes, it does really highlight the value for me of communities in general and how we really rely on each other for support, not just in times of crisis, but also in every situation of life. In our parish community, I think of all of the celebrations that take place within the context of a parish, all of the prayer gatherings, the sacramental celebrations, the liturgical seasons that we celebrate, Easter, Christmas, etc. And it does something for the wider community. It's more than just about showing up. It's more than just about being a member of the church, but it creates memories, and memory creates or helps us to hope. It gives us a foundation and a rock to build on and to lean on. I was reading an article not too long ago, a reflection by Pope Benedict XVI, in which he was talking about the connection between memory and hope, and that those who have good memories, those who have good experiences to draw from, are better able, when they face difficulties in life, to be sustained by the experience of hope, and to believe that things, even if they're challenging right now, may actually turn out okay, or there might be a light at the end of the tunnel. And there is a great gift, I believe, in what we do as a community, what we experience and live together as a parish, and of the memories we create and sustain each other with as we move forward.
I've seen that you brought some artifacts with you. Would you like to talk about them with us?
Sure, thank you, Linda. These artifacts, in one way or another, connect us to the upcoming feast of Easter and the celebrations that we'll be marking with Good Friday and with Holy Saturday and with Easter. They all, in one way or another, are connected to my Ukrainian heritage. 3 of my grandparents were of Ukrainian descent, and I still have a very close connection to the culture, and over the years have been appreciating more the beauty of the art and the symbolism. And so these items that I brought in here today, perhaps we could just take a few moments and I'll unpack some of the symbolism with you, and also connect them to our upcoming Easter celebration. And so this image here is what we call an icon. An icon is the Greek word for image or picture. And in the West, so in North America, in parts of Europe, the western part of Europe, this image is very popularly known as Our Lady of Perpetual Help. It's an image of Mary, the Mother of God, and Jesus in her arms. But in the East, so in eastern parts of Europe and beyond, in the Eastern Ukrainian Catholic, Ukrainian Orthodox tradition, this icon is called the Mother of God of Good Friday. Good Friday, of course, is the day when Jesus died. And what we see happening in this image is really an invitation into the mystery of Good Friday. Of course, Mary is holding Jesus in her arms, but in this picture, Jesus is somewhat preoccupied. He's not looking at us, he's not looking at her, but he's looking behind him. He's looking at what the angel's holding. And in this picture is the Archangel Gabriel, who is holding the cross. And on the other side of the image is the Archangel Michael, who's holding the spear and the sponge. So the cross, the spear, and the sponge, all of those are symbols of the crucifixion of Jesus and what he would experience on Good Friday. And so basically what's happening in this picture is Jesus is shown anticipating the events of Good Friday. He's anticipating the suffering, he's anticipating the crucifixion, and for that reason he is staying close to his mother. You could see how both of his hands are holding tightly to her thumb. Mm-hmm. And it's as if in anticipation of what's coming, he's ran to his mother and jumped into her arms, because if you take a look here, even below on the feet, he has on his right foot there, the sandal is dangling, as if he's ran so fast that even the sandal's about to fall off. Of course, there's different theological interpretations of all those, but essentially you have the mother and child anticipating what's coming. And for her part, Mary is in a pose of a particular kind of icon or image called She Who Shows the Way, because here she is holding him in her arms, but at the same time with her right hand pointing to Jesus who is the way, and Jesus who is the truth and the life. And so, and notice that while he's preoccupied with what's coming, it's as if she's speaking directly to us through her eyes. She's not looking at him, she's not looking at the cross, but she's looking directly at us, as if to say, are we ready to identify ourselves with her Son, even in his suffering and even in his death? And so for that reason, and a number of other reasons, this icon is called the Mother of God of Good Friday. And so so it brings us to that particular...
What are the notations on the picture?
That's right. So So they would be written, they would be initials in Greek,
Mm-hmm.
and the large ones on the top are the title of Mary, Mother of God.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then above the angels, you'll see notations or marks, letters also above them, and that would indicate which angel they are. So the Archangel Gabriel, the Archangel Michael, and next to Jesus then is his initials. So it identifies the individuals in the picture.
It's a very beautiful picture.
It is, and like I say, a very popular one in the West under a different title. And this particular picture, the actual painting itself, was a gift from me from one of the members of the McParland family.
Oh, nice.
And so there was a Father McParland
Mm-hmm.
who, I don't know the backstory beyond that, but it was in his possession, and then it came to me. And so it is an actual painting on the canvas.
Oh my goodness, really?
It's not a print, it's an actual painting, and it's been framed, and it's just the right size to be able to bring around and share the story with.
It's perfect.
Mm-hmm. So that brings us to Good Friday, the anticipation of Good Friday. And then if we move to another item here in the collection, and this is an example of Ukrainian folk art that would come from some of the villages in Ukraine. And this particular piece is what's called a blessing cross. And in the Ukrainian tradition, when a priest is giving a blessing for the people, it could be at the end of liturgy, for example, at the end of the service, he blesses the people gathered with the cross. So he holds it in his right hand and gives the blessing. And the story behind this is that there is a family leaving the village in Ukraine and coming over to Canada as immigrants in the early 1900s. And when they left the village, they asked the priest for his blessing. And along with his actual blessing, he gave them this blessing cross. And they've brought this with them and kept it in the family for the better part of 100 years.
Wow.
The cross itself was carved in 1899.
Oh my goodness.
And the date is inscribed on the bottom, 1899. And then you have the image, of course, of Christ crucified. But you could tell it's a very unique piece of Ukrainian folk art. On the back is, again, the mother and child. In the center, the mother and child. And so the cross, of course, is very symbolic, bringing us back to Good Friday, the instrument on which Jesus would die. But in the Ukrainian tradition too, this cross traditionally is placed in the hands of a person who has passed away. And when they're buried with the cross in their hands. And the idea is that as their soul passes from this life to the next, the cross becomes the key that they use to open the door and the gates of heaven. So symbolically, of course, the cross represents our union with Jesus in this life, our identifying with his passion, his death, his resurrection, our willingness to take up the cross and unite our own life to his. And in uniting our own life to his through faith, the mystery of the cross becomes the key, which then brings us and gives us entrance into the eternal life of heaven. So as a piece of folk art, it's an amazing example. And also on the religious side, it has profound meaning, for the people who would have carved it. Definitely. And who would have kept it for this long. So that's Good Friday. So we go from Good Friday into Holy Saturday. And as you make that transition from Good Friday to Holy Saturday, within our tradition, we always have on Good Friday the commemoration of the Passion of the Lord, and then the veneration of the cross. In the East, again, Eastern Catholic, Eastern Orthodox churches, they also do a similar thing, but instead of venerating the cross, they in many places will venerate or have a service with what's called the Holy Shroud. And this is an example of the Holy Shroud that's used on Good Friday and transitions the celebration into Holy Saturday. So at the end of the commemoration of the Lord's Passion, this shroud is processed through the church. It would be carried as if you're carrying a casket through the church, carried outside, and then out as if going to the cemetery, coming back in, and it's placed where the people can then, in the center of the church or near the front, take some time to pray and to venerate. This particular piece was given to me by a family who had connections to a Ukrainian church in the upper states of the United States of America, and it belonged to a church there, and it came into their possession, and they've given it to me. So I would say, I don't know the date for sure, but I would say that this would be at least 75 per 80 years old, maybe even older. But it's all hand painted on the canvas, on the fabric itself, and it's processed in the church at that time to recall the burial of the Lord. After he was taken down from the cross, he was placed in the tomb. And while they make the procession, they sing a traditional hymn. And the hymn is called The Noble Joseph, and it's a remembrance of Joseph of Arimathea. It was Joseph of Arimathea who had requested the body of Jesus be taken down and given a proper burial, and he had actually donated his own tomb for the burial of Jesus. And so the hymn, the text of the hymn is all around the Holy Shroud.
And what language is that in?
So that would be in a Ukrainian, but an Old Slavonic from what I understand. So Old Slavonic would be kind of like Latin, to English. It's a language that's not typically used in regular conversation, but it has a tradition in the liturgy of the church. And so that, so that's the text of the hymn is actually on the shroud, and that hymn is sung while it's being carried around. So what it speaks to us as Christians of is of pain and suffering is rarely in itself a thing of beauty. But Joseph of Arimathea, he, in his own way, he brought dignity to that moment, and he brought care and concern, and so it impresses upon us the importance and the beauty of reverence in the face of suffering, whatever form of suffering it might be, and that we hold on to the hope that even in the midst of suffering there may be something redemptive and redemptive in that experience. So the noble Joseph, and there we have the shroud. And so that brings us from Good Friday into Easter Saturday. And then Easter Saturday is a time of quiet in our tradition. It's a time of waiting and of silent prayer. We unite ourselves spiritually to the disciples who would have been confused and bewildered and not a little bit disoriented by what happened the day before, but who went into hiding and who went quiet for the day, not even knowing what was about to happen. And so on Holy Saturday, we as people of faith and as Christians do what we can to enter into the same spirit of the day with silence and prayer and quiet. We know how the story ends. Yeah. We know what's going to happen the next day. But we also identify with the disciples on that first Easter who dealt with a lot of questions and uncertainty. So that brings us to Easter Sunday. And the artifact that I brought along to represent Easter Sunday also has a connection to the old country, to Ukraine. And it's a a metal plaque, and I'll give you the backstory behind it. This metal plaque was from a gentleman who went back to Ukraine from Canada. He was living in Canada and he grew up in Canada, but he wanted to go back to Ukraine and to visit the area where his great-grandparents were from and to reconnect, find out a little bit more about their roots and what happened, and perhaps learn something from the families that were still over there about his heritage. And so he returned to the village where his grandparents were from, and he asked one of the locals to bring him to the cemetery. He was hoping he would see the headstones of his great-grandparents and of family members. And they made it out to the edge of town, and this gentleman from the village who was giving him the tour stopped the car at this really quite large parking lot out in the open. And they both got out of the car, and the gentleman who was looking for the cemetery was still looking around, and he was a little bit puzzled because the villager said, "We've arrived at the cemetery." Again, he was looking for headstones. And the villager went on to explain. He said that many years earlier, when the communists had come through, they came into the village, and one of the first things they did was they demolished the cemeteries. So they broke down the headstones, and some of the headstones they used for building materials, for fences or for homes, and they did it both to the Jewish and the Christian cemeteries in an effort to really eradicate the memory of the people and to eliminate the culture of the people. And so he said, this is the cemetery. After they leveled the headstones, they went the extra step further and paved it and turned it into a parking lot. The man went on to explain, though, that the communists weren't totally successful, right? They weren't totally successful because some of the villagers had actually managed to salvage some of the headstones, and they put them away. They hid them away for safekeeping. And so he brought the visitor, to a small shed not too far away, and lo and behold, there was a number of headstones there, and they looked through and found a headstone for his great-grandparents.
That's amazing.
Amazing, yeah. And for him, it was just a really powerful moment. And so they, of course, he couldn't bring back the headstone with him. He was more than moved to know that it was found.
Yeah.
But before he left, he was given this plaque. And this plaque was affixed to the headstone of his great-grandparents.
Oh my goodness.
And so this he brought back home as a remembrance of that moment, and of also the remembrance of the story. As much as these artifacts have value in and of themselves, it's the stories behind them that are the most precious, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so here again we have an icon or an image of the mother and child, of Mary and Jesus. And why I chose this particular piece as an image of Easter Sunday is because you could see it's been well worn, it's been well weathered, it's blackened, but there's a beauty to it in that the gold is shining through.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And the mother and child are as if they're emerging from the darkness. And this to me speaks of Easter.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This to me speaks of the hope that we have even in the darkest moment that we might find ourselves in. Through our faith, that gives us the ability to re-emerge and to discover new life in this world, or even and ultimately in the next. And again, try as they might, the communists were not able to destroy the faith. For all their efforts that they did to destroy the memory and to destroy the buildings, destroy the cemeteries, the faith itself went underground, like Jesus who went into the tomb,
Yeah.
but reemerged, if not stronger, after than before. And
What
so,
an amazing story.
yeah, very powerful, and I really do count it a privilege and blessing to have the artifacts, but also to be able to share the stories and retell that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very interesting.
Hmm. So all of these in one way or another can bring a new perspective on what it is that we as a faith community in our churches across our North Shore and beyond will be celebrating this coming Easter.
Thank you for taking the time and sharing your artifacts with us and the story of Easter and about your experiences and your life in Scriber.
Thank you, Linda, once again for having me here, and just like to take this opportunity to wish everyone a very happy Easter for those who celebrate it, and best wishes and blessings to everyone, and keep up the good work here, and thank you once again. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you. And thank you for watching.